Welcome to Good Burger Reviews. My name is John, and I'm here to review a brand new 2026 movie released to Shudder, and that is Beast of War.
We can't be the only ones left. Nearly 200 men gone on that bloody ship.
Every hour we drift further away from where they'll be looking.
What the hell was that?
This movie was directed by Kai Roche Turner. It stars Mark Cole Smith, Joel Nakavis, and Sam Dyche. Basic premise: a group of young soldiers fresh out of boot camp find themselves stranded on a raft in the middle of the ocean after their ship is sunk by the enemy and must battle for their lives against a giant, hungry, great white shark during World War II. So you thought we said goodbye to the sharks at the end of last summer, and I thought we did too. And here we are in the heart of winter, freezing cold weather out, snow on the ground, and they're airing shark movies? Well, I figured why not? It's new to Shudder, it's a new release. Let's see what this shark movie is all about. So when I think of Beasts of War, I think of the blend of two movies. G.I. Joe meets Jaws. And it's kind of funny to say that, but that's exactly what this movie is. And it also reminded me of another movie which made my top 10 shark movies last summer, which is Indianapolis. And that movie was based on the story told by Quint in the movie Jaws, where the Indianapolis sinks and the guys wait in shark-infested water. Well, this movie is the same exact storyline. It's also during World War II, just like the Indianapolis story was during World War II. But the difference here is Indianapolis had a lot going on in it. You know, it had the sharks, it had the army guys, but it had a whole lot more of like a whole Titanic thing going on. You know, it also had a Few Good Men thing going on it with the courtroom drama. I mean, it just was so impactful. When Indianapolis had all that stuff going on, this movie, Beasts of War, takes basically what we wanted out of a shark movie and combined it into just a little bit of a smaller setting, a little bit less stuff going on with it. So let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly about Beasts of War. Well, the big positive for me is it's a creature feature, it's a shark movie. The shark is not CGI for most of it. It seems to be more of a practical effects. Now, I'm going to mention this in the positive, but I'm also going to mention it in the mix too. And the positive is it's not a CGI shark. So for a lot of it, it just felt more realistic, more scary. And, you know, they were able to use the shark more, you know, the shark is seen more than in Jaws, more than in Indianapolis movie. Another thing I would put in the positive, similar to Jaws, now not as great as Jaws, this is not comparable with Jaws, but it has good characters. I really enjoyed Mark Cole Smith. I just reviewed a movie starring him in it where he was like a co-antagonist, and that was in We Bury the Dead. He played an army guy in We Bury the Dead, but of course in that movie he was like the evil 28 Days army guy. In this movie he's more of I don't know, not a Saving Private Ryan, but he was just more of a, closer to the army guys maybe in Pearl Harbor. I mean, he was just a more positive protagonist army guy. Another thing I liked about this is the setting. It's set during World War II, and I feel like they did a really good job of, and it's Australian, and they are Australian guys, and they do a good job of kind of making it feel like that time frame, the way the guys were, the way they talked, even with the accents, the stuff that they were doing, even the music they were listening to, the outfits they were wearing. I mean, they had it all down pat. And a lot of times when you get these straight to Shudder movies, they seem to lack on characters. Now, I mean, these characters aren't super developed, but they're better than the average bear when it comes to straight to streamers. And the group of guys that are in this, they they do a good job of connecting with each other in the good and the bad, because they're battling in some points and they're getting along in other parts. I mean, they are in a boot camp, and it's even before the shark comes, it's a very intense scenario that they're dealing with. It's also during World War II. Another thing I will say, considering that this is straight to a streamer pretty much, the cinematography was really good. I mean, I wouldn't say it's 100% top notch, because there are parts of this where it needs some work, but like there was just some great visuals, some great shots. I mean, there's a part where they're running in the forest when they're in boot camp on land, and then the second half of the movie they're on this boat where the boat sinks, and the boat sinks in the fog, and the fog and the images that are shown with the fog. So with all that being said, I guess that will lead me to the mix. Now, one of the things I was mixed on was there was a lot of characters, since this is about a bunch of guys that are in the military, they're at war and they're on a sinking ship, and there were so many characters even that survived the sinking that are left in floating in the water, that it was the same thing I said in Primate, where because of the lighting, because of everything, sometimes I had trouble telling difference between the characters. Like, I didn't know who was who half the time, because so many of them looked the same. Now, our main guy, Mark Coles, he stands out. He has just a little bit of a different look. I recognized him, and he, because he's the main star and he has the most going on with all the other characters, you always knew who he was, but the rest of them were kind of blending.
Every hour we drift further away from where they'll be looking.
What the hell was that?
Now, I also put this in the mix, just like any of these movies where you have a creature feature that is also featuring a second antagonist. So the shark sometimes took a little bit of a backseat to what was going on with, it seemed like not only was our main guy Mark Coles battling people within his own troop that kind of presented challenges for him, but also there's this one part where they encounter someone from the other side, a Japanese person who shows up and is also a major problem, and he has to deal with that as an antagonist. So it gets a little bit extra with a bunch of plot lines going on. But it was good, and that's why I was mixed about it, because what these other antagonists brought was tension and dramatics when the shark wasn't present. So I mentioned how I felt like the shark not being CGI was in the positives and in the mix. So what I'm mixed about it is I like that there were special effects that were practical effects, but sometimes the practical effects weren't top notch. So like the shark, in some of the scenes, it was very clear that it was like a fake shark. Not as bad as Cruel Jaws, where it looked like a giant bathtub shark, but it seemed like very stiff and rigid. Like the shark in the original Jaws like had a lot of movement, and this shark just seemed very frozen. When it would come up, it would just kind of gape. Now the underwater shots, which might have used a little bit CGI, but it wasn't that bad, they were decent.
He's gonna die.
Shut up, this.
And I guess what I can attribute this all to is this is not a high budget film. So, and it did a lot of high budget type of stuff. I mean, you have a ship, you have water, you have a shark. Even back in 1975 when they filmed Jaws, it was very challenging. And, you knew that these guys were out in real water in that movie, and all the Jawses. In this movie, that they're not really out in the real water. I feel like they definitely were in a soundstage for the water scenes. The water is extremely flat for the majority. It never, ever, even when it's raining, there's never waves. Like it's like they were on a lake, and they're in the middle of an ocean. They're in probably the Pacific Ocean. They never really say where they are, but I'm assuming since they're Australian, and they're dealing with Japanese, they probably were in the Pacific or Indian Ocean. So the budget shows itself in this movie, but I wouldn't say it takes away, because there really is a lot of dramatics. There's some good storyline. There's good characters. The characters, even though they blend together, some of them, they really had me captivated, especially our main star, Mark Cole-Smith. And I guess what I'll put into the negatives is, you know, this movie's kind of been done before. You know, it is like Indianapolis, just on a smaller scale. I guess there's this other part I'll put in negatives, and this is kind of a small thing, but like there were these two nurse characters that were kind of in the beginning, two females, and I thought, okay, maybe we'll have a little romance, maybe we'll have a little, you know, girls in this movie, because it was really primarily all men. You know, and a lot of these war movies, you know, you very rarely get those female characters, but they're introduced and then you never see them on the boat. They're not part of the sinking. They're not part of being shipwrecked. So, like, they were just there to be something, small roles in the beginning, I guess. So I'm going to give a spoiler warning now, because the rest I want to comment on is just basically give a storyline of what really happens in this, and then just kind of give my feelings about how it ended. So, spoiler warning. So this movie opens up in a boot camp somewhere, I assume in Australia, and it was a very intense boot camp. They're running drills and stuff, and the guys are young, and they're kind of having a little fun with it, even though they are getting driven pretty hard. And there is like some tension developing already between our main characters, like our main two characters. You know, they're running this one drill, and the one sinks and falls into quicksand, or it's like mud, but quicksand. It kind of acts like quicksand, and he rescues them out. And when they get back, this drill sergeant's like, you know, you guys can sit and have some nectarines, and the rest of you get to work on doing push-ups and stuff. And they're kind of like, why? You know, they start complaining, and it's like, well, you know, it's important that you guys understand that when you guys are out in the field, you're mates, and you know, he took care of him. And this is all part of introducing our main character, Mark Coles. You know, he's the one that rescues the guy that sinks, and it, you know, clearly putting him as our head protagonist in this movie.
Pretty soon, you boys will be sailing into war. And in that place, there's only you and your mates.
And then I'd say it maybe 15-20 minutes of this, you know, they're doing drills, and then they kind of engage with these nurses, and then there's some horsing around a little bit, but it doesn't take too long before we're out on the boat. And I would say the boat scenes, like the actual boat scene, you could tell again, like it was filmed inside. They literally show them in their bunk throughout the whole sinking. So there was no budget enough for like a big like Titanic type of sinking. So the sinking was definitely a disappointment in this one. I would put that in the negatives. But once they sink, you know, it just kind of, there's a little bit of special effects with some red light, and the next thing you know, they all wake up and they're on like this floating raft of leftover debris of whatever, you know, whatever survived the sinking. Because the boat sank because it was like torpedoed by the Japanese. So I'd say there's anywhere between like 9 and maybe 15 guys that are floating around, and next thing you know, the shark shows up. And I would say also in the positives, you know, the kills, you know, are intense. They definitely don't shy away from gore in this one. I mean, this shark is bloodthirsty, and it's bloody, and it's dramatic too. These guys are screaming and carrying on, flailing. I mean, I think they did a really good job with that part of it. You know, the shark. I mean, even though the shark never 100% seemed real, the story was still very engaging, and the way the actors were, I feel like these guys, none of them are very well known. I feel like they really put their A game into playing these roles, even some of the smaller guys who just maybe pop up for a quick death. So the shark comes on them a couple times, then disappears for a little while, but then they're also dealing with each other. There's a little bit of some light comedy where they resort to having to drink their own urine, and that's a whole spectacle. And then there's also a little bit of battles between each other because of how much water, how much food. They start that whole, like, very similar to Indianapolis, where some of them are hallucinating, they're not sure what's going on, and it's you know, they do a good job with that. And remember, it's still World War II. Well, there's this all of a sudden they hear a plane. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is the end because it seemed too early to be rescued. I'm like, oh, well, what's going to happen? Are we going to have a Jaws 2 helicopter scenario? Or, where's this going to go? And the plane is the enemy. And they now not only are they fighting the shark, but they're also battling the Japanese. Still, they're flying by, shooting them with the plane. And some of the deaths, which I would put this in the mixed or negatives, some of the deaths weren't from the shark. And it plays to be more realistic for a story. They're just stuck in the midst of all this chaos, and they're dying either from the shark, from the planes, from the water. So it's realistic, but I always, in a shark movie, in a creature feature, I love it when the shark does the business. And our main guy shoots down one of the planes that had been shooting at them, and then off in the distance you've seen one of the enemies, one of the Japanese, is coming up on like this rowboat or maybe a motorboat or some sort of floating boat. And there's this hesitation about, are we going to just unite because we're all stranded here, or are we still battling? And yes, they were still battling. I mean, this guy, he was solo, but he battles with them, and it just plays out. There was this whole other thing where our main guy, Mark Cole Smith, is like, he's having these like, I'm not sure if they're really hallucinations or if they're memories, but he's thinking about it. At first I thought maybe it was a younger version of himself, or maybe it was his brother or a younger brother or a son. I mean, he was too young to have a full-grown son. The person that's in the vision is younger than him, but not by much. And I'm thinking, what is this vision? It keeps coming back to it, but it never really, I feel like they never really explained it. And then, where it comes into the end where this guy's tired of the shark, tired of, battling the Japanese World War II enemies, so he's going to take care of everything, even though they've been all beaten down. And it gets down to like, at the end, there's like 4 of them, and then two. I'm pretty sure it was the guy that he rescued out of the mud is the last 2. And he ends up, there's grenades present, so this was a Jaws the original type of ending, because he blows the shark up with a grenade. Actually, I guess it's more of a Jaws 3 ending because it was a grenade. It was a bomb. He somehow manages, after being beat down a lot, gets the grenade shoved down the shark. He literally just shoves it down the shark's throat like, here, eat this, stupid, and blows the shark up. And then the end, I'm glad. Okay, so I was mixed about the ending because I'm glad like they killed the shark, because it seemed like last year all the shark movies, like the shark was swimming away, the shark just abandoned, the shark was left to live, and it was like, what are we having, shark rights in our shark movies? And that was a very big disappointment in a lot of shark movies last year. Well, no, the shark gets its just desserts and gets blown up in this one. But it was, very minimal kill. It just was like he shoves the bomb in the house and chums the bomb in the mouth. And, it looked very similar to Jaws 1 and Jaws 3's ending, but not nearly as great as Jaws 1. But, it ends that way. The shark's dead. They get rescued. Or the other guy was fixing the boat while he was killing the shark. They found tools, and he puts this motorboat, gets the motorboat running, and then they basically don't swim off, but they kind of escape off, Brody and Hooper style, at the end. So let's get down to business on this one, because I was mixed about it, thinking, first of all, why am I watching a shark movie in January? And it's a shark war movie, and I'm not always a fan of sharks during wars, but this one was really good. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I love Jaws. I love shark movies, so even some weaker shark movies will keep me entertained. So I will leave it at that, and I am going to give Beasts of War a good burger. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the shark. I enjoyed what they did. It took what I wanted. I love Indianapolis, but like I said, Indianapolis is so stuffed. So it took what I liked about Indianapolis and kind of compacted it into an hour and 30-minute movie. Well, this is Johnny with Good Burger signing off, and don't forget to please like, subscribe, tap that notification bell, all that jazz, and don't forget to stay scared of those sharks that come after you when you're waiting shipwrecked on a World War II boat.